Dr. Katherine Iscoe is a keynote speaker, author, board member, former CEO of a dual listed public company, academic mentor, and summa cum laude graduate with multiple scholarships and awards. Despite these achievements and perceived public success, Catherine's mental health was teetering on collapse. This led to her research into self respect, particularly for people pleasing high achievers. The self respect revolution is all about changing the relationship that we have with ourselves to enable us to change our relationship with the world around us. I hope that this episode can help you better understand self respect, the research Catherine has been able to do, but also to see how you can make changes in your marketing, in your business, and in your personal life to be even more proud of your choices and actions so you feel more comfortable sharing your work with the world. Welcome to the podcast, Catherine. It's so good to have you.
I'm so happy to be here. And one of the things I love is your accent.
Amazing. Yes. So growing up, that was one of the things I didn't like. And then I had people tell me, oh, I could listen to you like read the disclaimers on a medical thing. And I was like, okay, cool. It's just myself. It's just me and my own thing. I could just like push that out of my head.
I love
Um,
it.
yeah. So let's get into it. So what sparked your interest in research in the first place?
Oh, gosh, my father. My father basically raised me as a little human being to always ask questions. And yes, I was that annoying kid that always asked why, but I really got fascinated in the human body. And to give you an indication of how much the extents that my father would go to is on car drives, on long trips. If there was a roadkill, he would pull over and my brother and I and show both of us the exposed innards of a porcupine.
Wow.
And he would say, that's the intestines, that's where, enzymes break down food and so forth. And nowadays that would probably be a child protective services kind of thing. But I still remember it. And I still remember that damn porcupine and really, I guess, introducing me to a different world and what you see rarely is so simple. And I later got very interested in the mind because I spent about 10 years studying the human body, but the body only works if the mind works. And I'm sure we'll get into it, but it was like this rolling ball gathering moss that just kept on asking questions. Okay, now I figured out that. What's another layer? What's another layer? And that's really what led me into questioning what is self respect and why don't we have healthy levels of it? My quiz showed that 63% of individuals wish they had more self-respect. So now I'm totally integrated into the world of self-respect and trying to unravel this mystery.
That's amazing. I also love that piece of like what everything seems from the outside is not necessarily just how things are. So like basically you learning to question just about everything as you grow up of just like all of everything is not as it seems. So let's ask some questions and get a little deeper. I love that. And then in terms of like the typical conversation that I kind of tend to see about like self-worth, self-esteem and confidence, it's kind of like a confidence of like, do you have the confidence to get on camera and then publish it? Um, and those kind of discussions of like how you can like build your confidence or just do it, like push through it or whatever. But when
Mhm.
I saw that you were talking about self-respect, it was kind of like a light bulb went off because I was like, oh, but of course. Because if you say you want to do something, it's not necessarily about what everyone else is going to think or some kind of external commitment to something. It's like I said I was going to do this, I want to do this, and I'm going to do it for myself, and it's not going to be perfect the first time around, but you know,
Mhm.
I can't get any better if I don't do it. When I heard about the self-respect piece, I was like, okay, of course. Why have we never really talked about this before? Especially because as like a people pleaser myself, it's the
Mhm.
bowing down to what other people think, or even sometimes like internalizing what other people might think, even though they've never said it before. Um, and yet putting like their opinion potentially above mine or pausing instead of doing something when like the imposter syndrome kicks in. Um,
Mhm.
so was self-respect the original thing that you wanted to research, or was it just something that came up as you were researching?
It came up, well, it was the background is I was very interested in the human body. And because I had, I guess, behind the curtain, I had severe body image issues and eating disorders. Ironically, I was studying how to be quote unquote healthy. So to be healthy is balance, but I thought balance was eating perfectly and exercising all the time. So then I started working with individuals and I found out, wow, they're going exactly through what I'm going through. And then it sort of went from diet and exercise and mindset into confidence. Then, whenever I was talking about confidence, it was always, but you also need to consider blah. And so I started questioning this whole thing about self respect because we don't talk about it. It's very much a part of the philosophical literature, when you look at Shakespeare and so forth. And that's actually how it came up because my father always taught me this quote, to thine own self be true. And it has made such an impact that I have it tattooed on my arm. So I got my father to write it several times and I got it tattooed on my arm because self-respect is really honesty in action. So I started questioning, like, why is it different than confidence? And to your point of, when we want to do something, why don't we do it? What is that foundation? And that's exactly what self-respect is. So maybe if I could just sidestep and just sort of tell the audience what the difference is between them, and then they might be able to understand, how to put those building blocks together. So if you picture a house, confidence is your ability to sell your house. So, women in business, you have a product, you have service, your ability to say, hey, this is a great house. I think you would be wonderfully happy in it. I think you should buy it. Now, some days you're a bit, more on the ball than others. Self esteem is how much you like your house or how much you like yourself. Now, this is variable as well because if you have someone that comes to your product and say, wow, I've been looking all my life for this product, you feel really good about yourself. You're like, oh my God, this is going to work. My business is going to work. But if you have someone that inquires about it and then goes silent, you're like, what am I doing? I should just quit my business. That's it. Self worth is how much you value your house. So, again, coming back to business, you think, I have something of value, and no matter what, I'm going to work on it. You have good days, you have bad days. So, all of these three factors are very variable. Self respect, though, is the foundation. And what I found through my research is independent of your confidence level, self esteem, and self worth, or how much you believe in selling your house, how much you like your house, or how much you think it's of value. Self respect is always that foundation. So even if your business goes bust, or you can't sell the house, or the weather tears it down, the foundation is always there. And why this is important is because we live in a world that's highly opinionated and highly dependent on others. So, how can we be flexible and understand that even though my business is going horribly, no one likes it, and so forth, I still know that what I'm doing is important. And so that is why I'm so passionate about self respect because it's really almost like a safety net for individuals once they have high levels of self respect that they can go out there and do those crazy ideas, pitch VCs, launch a new product without, whatever that dream is, you can do it. And even though it's not going your way, you're like, you know what? Even though the product isn't going the way I wanted, I know that I still am important as an individual. And that's what I want for women, especially in business, because it is so hard, whether you are a woman, man, or however you identify. Business is hard because it's less about you and more about whether people want your service or like your service. It's so hard, so hard.
That makes perfect sense. So how did that come about in your research? Was it that you just kept trying to find the thing the extra piece that you had to consider?
That's exactly it. So I interviewed incredible leaders, everyone from small business owners to public company CEOs to a mom that's taking a break to anyone that you can think of. And I interviewed them and I asked them questions. What does self respect mean to you? What does it feel like when you have it? What does it feel like when you don't have it? How does it apply to this situation versus that situation? And I'll give you an example. I thought that self respect had a very strong correlation to body image or what we see in the mirror and whether we like it or not. There was no correlation. I couldn't believe it. So the research, even though I was very biased, I was like, no, there must be a correlation. it really opened my eyes to the incredible power of self-respect. And interestingly, getting back to body image, because I believe uh, women, I mean, women and men, of course, but we definitely are, I think, a bit more picky, if you will, for our appearance. When you have self-respect, you take pride in your appearance, but you know that you are here for a higher purpose. And that's why I love self-respect. And what a nugget of gold that was from the research. Because I think a lot of times, we see these women on the cover of Vogue and they're airbrushed and we think their shit doesn't stink. And at the end of the day, they're just like us. And we can do that as well. And that's why I love it. And I wish more women would believe that they really can contribute.
Yeah, totally. So we have this thing in New Zealand, and I think it's the same in Australia, tall poppy syndrome. And
Mhm,
it's kind of this thing where if someone, they're being criticized for either being successful or bragging about their success.
mhm,
And then what inherently happens is like the overcorrection, where people don't want to put themselves out there because they might get that criticism, or especially from the people in their circle. Like, not necessarily they might end up in a newspaper with a negative piece about them, but the people around them that they know and trust might think these things about them. And so that overcorrection means that they then necessarily don't put themselves out there.
mhm.
Um, or do the things, maybe either they start, but then they get one slight comment or something like that. Um, how does that kind of piece play into it? Maybe even around the world. I'm sure other people have these same things, they just call it something different.
Mhm.
How has that had an impact within your research?
It's interesting. When I first moved here, I started learning about the concept. I was like, oh, is this a gardening principle? Because we don't have it back home in Canada, nor, and definitely not in the United States. I mean, the more boastful you are, the better people think you are in business. And even back home, like in the United States, if you go bankrupt, it's like a badge of honor. Oh, wow, you have tried. Whereas here, it's something that is so shameful. So it's a very different mentality. But I think it's interesting. If I were to ask a woman, do everything you can to be arrogant and boastful, they won't be able to. You just, you're not. And I think as a high achieving people pleaser, because that's really, I think what you and I really resonate with, we think that if we speak about ourselves in a very positive manner, that's coming across as arrogant or boastful. It is not. So we think that saying, "Hey, I'm really proud of myself and I'm really proud that my course sold out," or, that I've raised my prices because I really value my product and I know this is going somewhere. In our minds, we're telling ourselves, "Shut up. God, everyone's going to hate you for saying that." No one's thinking that. We are
Nope.
thinking that. So we think if we are a bit complimentary to ourselves, that is the equivalent of being a conceited narcissist and we will go to hell. So something came out in the research, a concept called healthy selfishness. Now, this applies when it comes to boundaries, self care, but it also applies to promoting yourself, which is so important in business because if no one knows about you, no one's going to buy from you. So, healthy selfishness is a concept of saying, even if I just say a few nice things about myself, that's not going to make me a conceited, arrogant narcissist. It's actually just going to make me a very normal, healthy, self respecting human being. And to your point of whether or not people will criticize you and try to take you down, no matter what you do, no matter what you do, there's always going to be those people. And self respect is knowing the only opinion that you really need to care about is the one that you have of yourself. Now, a caveat to that is thinking that when you have self respect, oh, nothing can hurt you. And you're going to be like always this happy, like farting unicorns and rainbows are going to come out of your bum and everything's going to be. No, I still want people to like me. I still want everyone in the world to say, "Oh, she's amazing." But the trick is how to be okay if they don't. So it's okay to be human. It's okay. We're likely going to be people pleasers until we have one foot in the coffin. That's okay. It's about managing those thoughts and being able to shift a bit more quickly than you can. And I think that's such an important thing to highlight is oftentimes to your point of, we go the opposite way. We go from worried about that we're arrogant to being these, silent human beings that close our business. There's middle ground, but that takes practice to sort of shift and dance to get to that middle ground. But at the end of the day, it's doing and saying things before you think they come naturally, if that makes sense.
That makes perfect sense. Um, so it sounds like it's super common. I don't really wanna say normal, but common. Um, so if we are practiced at putting ourselves second, and that's kind of like second nature to us, basically, it can be hard to identify in the moment when it's happening sometimes, like
Mhm.
maybe easier in hindsight. When it's actively happening, how can we notice it to do something about it?
It's such a good question, and it's a great question because I went through it about 2 years ago, and I think what you're getting at is when we're putting ourselves second, how do we know when burnout or overwhelm is about to hit us? And interestingly, as a high achieving people pleaser, I call it the burnout trinity because it's very different, I guess, different than quote unquote other people. High achieving people pleasers are one that, whether you admit it or not, you always want to go to another level, but to go to another level, you have to put yourself out there and you're concerned with what people think, right? So that's one of the characteristics. So this is like you're always moving, always going. So 2 years ago, I found myself just not feeling myself. And I don't know if you've ever felt that way when you wake up and just something feels off. And it just kept on getting worse and worse and worse. One of my colleagues said, "Well, why don't you go talk to someone, a psychologist?" And the long story short is within 15 minutes, she said, "You're burnt out. You're going to need to take some time off." And I said, "That's never going to happen. High achieving people pleaser here." And I said, "Well, okay, how much time out?" And she said, "Well, at least a month." And I said, "You're smoking crack. That's never going to happen." I bargained her down to taking the rest of the afternoon off. Like no high
Wow.
achiever here, from 30 days to 3 hours. And I came home, and there's a great exercise that I really recommend to your listeners, which is called flow writing. It was first validated in the 1970s. Essentially, what you do is you set your timer on your phone to 5, 10 minutes. You take a piece of paper and a pen and you write. It's almost like opening the taps. You just like everything come out. You don't cross out anything. You don't scratch anything out. You just write. Now, to do so, you start with a catalyzing phrase. Mine was, "How does it feel to be me right now?" And I thought the clouds were going to, part and God was going to, shine light off the paper and say, "Here's your solution. Here's how you can get back to work and be that amazing, go back to being a high achieving people pleaser, really." What happened was the most incredible profanity that I've ever written in my entire life. We're talking, it was like psychopathic killer writing, like grabbing the pen like a Neanderthal. I was so angry. And when the timer sounded, I threw my journal on the couch and I gave it the double middle finger. I was angry because I was angry. I was saying, how could I let myself get to this point? And I think that's what overwhelm feels like. You're angry that you are this intelligent person that is running a business, that's managing a household, but how can you get to the point where you can't keep your shit together? And looking back through the lens of self-respect and really questioning, why was I so angry? I was wasting time blaming others. I was saying, "Oh, it's your fault that I'm in this situation. It's you're to blame." When really, as hard as it was to admit it, all the decisions that I made, all the choices that I made got me to that point. And so when it comes to overwhelm and burnout for the population that we're talking about, which is, I think, very much, the individuals that you work with, high achieving people pleasers, is to watch out for something that I call the burnout trinity, which is fuck, fear, and the facade. So fuck is anger. Why am I so angry? Asking yourself, I'm I'm feeling bitter, I'm feeling resentful, like that kind of feeling. Do you have that kind of feeling, whether it's to your partner, whether it's to your kids, whether it's to a client? Is that starting to bubble up? Fear as a high achiever is the fear, the paralytic fear that you're never going to be successful. And that's typically bubbling under the surface, right? Whether it's conscious or not, you're always worried, am I ever going to get that 40 under 40 award? Am I ever going to do this? There's always another level. And the facade is not wanting to admit it because as again a high achieving people pleaser, our fear is to admit that we're down on the ground and we need help. So even when there's someone there that we know will help us and is reaching their hand down to lift us up, the only thing that we can think of is, I wonder what they're thinking of me. I'm so worried about their opinion. So, how can we look out for that and how can we prevent that from happening? Is to be very in tune and very accurate with your emotions, understanding what your body and mind is telling you so you can be very aware and prevent those things from happening. Now, the question is, how do you fix it? That's a whole other conversation.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I just think of all of the times, like, in hindsight where I've realized XYZ and kind of thought, "How come I couldn't see that in the moment?" And it was that facade piece of, like, I was pretending everything was fine. So, yeah.
Exactly, exactly. And
Yeah.
it's so interesting that you say that. I have a couple of girlfriends, and we went for a walk, and they said, this is a while ago, and they said, how are you doing? And I said, well, I could tell you that I'm doing great, but that's not true. I'm actually doing really crappy. And this is like my first walk with this person. And she said, I'm so glad you said that because now I know, and now I can say, how can I help you? And I think when it comes to women helping each other, unless we're honest about where we're at, rather than playing this, everything is okay, my business is going okay, that's what's going to fester underneath us. And, we try to be these beautiful, like compassionate and very empathetic human beings, but that's fake. If under the surface you're pissed off, you're angry, and you're feeling resentful, that paradox is going to play in your mind like a ping pong match that never ends. And that is what's going to expedite burnout and overwhelm. And guess what? When you're in that situation, nothing works. Your business doesn't work, your relationships don't work, nothing works. So I think the honesty, this is why I had this quote on my arm, to thine own self be true. I always say, what's the worst thing that could happen if I say to a colleague or a friend, listen, I'm struggling with this. I don't know how to do it. Can you help? The worst case scenario is they say, probably, I'm really overwhelmed right now. I would love to help, but I can't. That's the quote unquote the worst thing that could happen.
Mm. Well, essentially, if you don't ask, it's a no because you're not even giving them the option.
Hmm.
Yeah, and I think sometimes when it comes to like fronting up or sharing that piece of information for me, it's kind of like I don't want that person that I want to confide in, but maybe I'm holding back. I don't want them to when I do finally tell them, think, why haven't you ever told me this before? Like, did you not feel safe to tell me this thing? And sometimes it's just that we've built it up in our head to be something bigger, or once we vocalize it, it becomes this thing.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, but yeah, that just makes so much more sense of like how to even really understand that it's happening in the moment. And I guess it's that active thing of reflecting regularly rather than just kind of like steamrolling through and being like, yeah, everything's fine. I'll just grin and bear it and get
Yep.
through it. And it's just a tough week, but then it's just a tough month and it's just a tough year. Like it just expands out into this thing that
Hmm.
becomes so much harder to face, especially once you get burnt out, because yeah, that is not fun.
Exactly.
So with that, how do we even really know, sometimes we adopt other people's beliefs as our own or other people's opinions as our own. How do we even start to differentiate and identify what we want?
Wow, that's a $1,000,000 question, right? I So 2 years ago when that burnout sort of started to subside, I started asking myself, okay, what's going wrong? And what I found when I getting back to the choices that I was making, that all the choices that I was making were trying to impress others to keep this facade going. So at the time, I was the CEO of a global company, and that on the outside was something that women really revere. Oh, wow, you're adding to the numbers, you're adding to the stats. But at the end of the day, that was really breaking my soul. And so I just quit everything. And at the time, my relationship was hanging on by a thread. My partner and I actually ended up breaking up and then getting back together and so forth. So when I say it was bad, like planning to move out, all that kind of stuff. And it's that kind of shakeup that I think I never wish on anyone. But when you get to that low point that you feel like you got nothing left, you realize that the time is ticking. And what I started to ask myself is, why was I trying to impress others? And what I found out, the more I was trying to impress others with my choices, the less I respected myself. So the decision was, I was like, what makes me happy? And this is when that sort of catalyzed this whole self-respect conversation, because whenever I have, my feels like my world is put upside down, I always go to my dad. My dad is my guiding light. He's the guy that never tells me what to do, but always asks the right questions. So I you have the answers inside you. Sometimes you just need someone to, show you the path.
Mm.
And what I found is that, you know, as yeah, whether it's hard to call yourself a visionary, but when you see something, like I saw something in self-respect, and when I see women and the incredible power that self-respect can give a woman, not only in their business and professional lives, but also in their relationships, setting boundaries, taking care of themselves. There's this hot topic of narcissistic partners. Put that all into a bowl and mix it around. I started saying, what makes me happy? And what makes me happy is people, and having really uncomfortable conversations that move the needle. Because what I'm really passionate about is helping people understand that they're important. And when they do that, they have this profound sense of liberation. Because when you respect yourself, also, it's impossible to disrespect others. And so my mind sort of works like looking at squirrels all the time. So it's like squirrel, squirrel. All these things sort of got put into a bowl and mixed together. And that's when I started the self-respect revolution, which is all about helping individuals, especially high achieving people pleasers, respect themselves. Because when they do, how they live, how they love, and how they lead is exponentially improved. So that's how that all came about. Now, was it easy to say, I quit everything? I quit this incredible job. I'm going to get back with my partner. No, of course not. But at the end of the day, once you make choices that you know you're going to be proud of, it makes a big, big difference. And I think pride is a big thing that we don't talk about. Oftentimes we think, I have a great job. I live in a great apartment. Ergo, I'm happy. And was I happy in that job and in that relationship? Yes, I was. But was I proud of the life that I was living? The answer was no. Big difference, because I think, again, as people pleasers, we need to be grateful. We need to be grateful for the lives we have. We need to be grateful for our children and our family and so forth. That's wonderful. It's wonderful to be happy. But the deeper question is, are you proud of the life that you're living? And that is what shakes the crap out of people. And that's the question I love asking. That is
Yeah,
what really, really moves the needle.
it's so powerful.
Mhm.
So once you kind of figure out potentially what you're not proud of, how can you kind of get to that point of, I guess, figuring out the how?
Mm.
Have you found in your research that there's a way that people can change the things to get closer to that self-respect, whether there's trial and error involved, or because sometimes when we notice the cause of something, we don't necessarily know how to like fix it or change different things, especially if we're worried about hurting other people.
Oh, that's a big one. And I think at the core of it, if you are basing your decisions on not hurting people, you're always going to be in a quandary. And again, that gets back to that people pleasing and worrying more about others versus ourselves. If you base all your decisions on that, it's gonna feel really comfortable in the moment. You're like, "This is the right thing to do because this is my value set." I'm compassionate, I'm empathetic. But whether it takes a day, a week, a year, eventually you're gonna get back to that burnout trinity. You're gonna be resentful to that person, you're gonna be angry, and the cycle is gonna repeat over and over again. So there's 3 main ways that people can build self-respect, but the most important thing to do is get a baseline. Where are you at? And I've developed, based on my research, a quiz. It's free on the website, et cetera, et cetera. Just get that baseline to see, okay, where am I at? What are the things that I'm really good at? What are the things I'm not good at? Then you go into 3 things, and I would say the 3 main things would be boundaries, choices, and improving how you self-respect. So boundaries is basically asking yourself what's okay and what's not okay. So in business, for example, if you are providing a service, is it okay to answer a phone call from a client at 8 p.m. on a Friday? It could be. Maybe it's yes. You do you, boo. That's fine. But if it isn't, how can you practice and have a very clear and respectful answer for when that happens? So really figuring out what's okay, what's not okay. So important. But the problem is, based on that quiz, about 63% of respondents say they prioritize others over themselves. Mucho big problem here. So, boundaries is a big one. The second one is about choices, asking yourself right before you make a choice, whether it's to work with a client, whether it's to stay in a relationship, whatever your question is that's on your mind right now. And I know you're going to have one question on your mind right now. Think about the choice that you're about to make. Is it to avoid conflict? Is it to keep the peace? Is it to not hurt someone? Or is it a choice that you can say, actually, I'm proud of that choice because that's the kind of person I want to be? Very, like, the choices are polar opposites, by the way. Like, they're usually very, very different, and it takes time to get there. Self-reflection, 50%, 50% of people are not proud of their past when they look back at it. So self-reflection is how you look at the past. Self-awareness is in the moment. So for example, right now, how am I feeling in the moment? Like, what's my heart rate doing? How's my posture? Really understanding what my thoughts are. Self-reflection is looking at experiences in the past and saying, I wonder what was going on then. If you don't have self respect, you're going to look back at that experience and say, I was a bad person. How could I have done that? Gosh, I'm so stupid. Yeah, blah, 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 blah. You're looking at that past and you feel immense amounts of shame. Individuals with healthy levels of self respect are able to look back at those experiences with what I call the Yoda mindset. A Yoda mindset, from Star Wars, do or do not, versus a Darth Vader. So Darth Vader would be like that angry, like everything's evil, everything's bad, you're a bad person. A Yoda mindset is looking back at those experiences and saying, I wonder, I wonder what was going on for me then. Because oftentimes we have a bias that we look back at those experiences with the mindset we have today, which is more wise, whether you know it or not. We think back then we knew everything that we know now. We didn't. And I can tell you without a shadow of a doubt, when I was 16, I was damn stupid compared to who I am now. So if I were to ask the question, how did I not know better at 16? If I had the mindset now, that's what creates that shame and embarrassment and guilt. So looking back at those experiences, for example, let's say you had to shut down a business, or let's say you screwed up with a client and you gave them a report and it had a whole bunch of errors. How can you look back at that choice, that experience, and say, I wonder, I'm curious, how can I learn, versus saying I'm a bad person? So the 3 things: boundaries, looking at your choices, can you say that you're making choices that you're proud of? And when you think of a past experience, perhaps if the audience can think of one now, what is the first feeling that comes to mind? Is it I wonder, or is it I don't even want to think about that because I was such a bad person? And understanding the difference between the 2.
I love that. Yeah, it's that thing of taking time to take stock of what's happening, but also while not being super critical of your past self and just thinking like, what could I do better in the future potentially? Or what better expectation could I set, or whichever thing, um, rather than it being like I'm a terrible person or any of those kind of things, because I feel like it's also just not productive to do that. Like if you're just tearing yourself down, you're not gonna get to that point where you realize the pieces that you could have improved that you can then actually, like, put in place now.
Exactly. It's like accepting compliments is sort of similar in the sense of asking yourself when someone compliments you and says, wow, like your website is so beautiful. Do you say thank you or do you say but? The difference is thank you. I actually did a lot of work on that and it took me a lot of time. So I really, really appreciate you saying that. But is when they say, wow, I like your website. Oh, but I had someone helping me with it and like I didn't really do anything. Or yeah, but see this page, it's really not where I'm at. Huge difference between the two, in being able to say, hey, you know what, I'm actually pretty proud of who I am versus constantly saying there's another level. There's something more that I can do. But it gets back to that feeling of, oh, am I coming across as arrogant? And again, getting back to I would love for a woman to try their best to be arrogant. It just won't happen. You just can't do it.
I feel like I'm just gonna have to challenge myself to, like, try that over the next couple weeks and just, like, force myself to do it,
Yeah.
and then, yeah, reflect on it and be like, "Yeah, really was nowhere near, like, as much as bad as, like, I potentially would think that it would become." Um, yeah, because it's just not that. I'm never gonna be that, like, boastful. It'll all be, like, practical and reasoned and all of those things, so,
Yeah, and
yeah.
it'll be honest though. It's not about
Yeah,
lying. It's not about saying that you're proud of something just to say you're proud of it.
yeah.
You can say, "Listen, thank you for that, but one of the things I did work hard on that, but one of the things that I noticed when I did that is I would like to improve on that." Big difference in your answer. It's again, honesty in action. Being transparent, but also being respectful to you as a human that is going to grow until your last dying day.
One of the things I like to remind myself about is, like, done is better than perfect. And then I saw that one of the things that you talk about is done is more productive. Well, no, profitable. Done is more profitable than
Mhm.
perfect, which I, again, had another light bulb moment because better is so subjective. Um, so I like that of, not only can I improve over time, but it's actually just more profitable if I put it out there now. And I talk about the things that I am proud of while I'm working on the other pieces or what have you. But that to just hold back is doing a disservice to myself, but also potential customers and everything that I have. But also putting that thing of profitable. How did you get to that point?
Someone said that to me because I would, when it comes to my keynote speaking, am I a high achiever? Am I hard on myself? Absolutely. But interestingly, when I'm hard on myself, I really notice when that being hard on yourself is starting to be detrimental to my mindset. So it's really balancing that because I'm very proud to be a high achiever. I do never want to not be a high achiever. But what this individual said, who was helping me on the keynote, she said, just get it out there. And I said, well, yeah, no, but, and what I was doing in my head was saying, unless it's Brene Brown worthy, the most prolific and the most famous speaker in the universe, unless it was on that level, I couldn't put it out there. How ridiculous is that? And let me tell you, I have pages and pages and pages of testimonials, right? Pages of like, oh, that was a great. But in my mind, I was like, no, 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 now it's different because now I've been speaking for years and years and years. And unless it's Brene Brown, so you get to that and you're like, yeah, but how am I going to get better at it if I'm not on stage? But it's really hard because in our minds, we know what we need to improve on, right? But the thing is, it's kind of like shining an apple, right? You take an apple, you shine one side, and you're like, oh, that looks so shiny. Like it's ready to go out there. And then you turn the apple and you're like, oh, that doesn't look so I'm gonna shine that side, and then I'm gonna put it out. So you're like, shine, shine, shine. And then you look at the first side and you're like, oh, but that's not as shiny. So you're constantly shining the apple. But we always think that unless we can give our audience more, unless we can give our clients more, well, we're doing them a disservice because it's not as good as we think it can be. And that's really that's still very challenging for me. But what I always do is after I give a talk, for example, I say, I even though it's cringeworthy, I watch back the talk and I say, okay, that's a spot I know I can do better there. I'm going to do that next time. Now, is it easy to look at those errors as a high achieving perfectionist? No, no. Like your bum is clenched tighter than you could ever imagine. It's like, oh, cringe, cringe, cringe. But that's the only way. That is the only way. And it's really it's a bit of a mind game, isn't it? But hey, you got to play the game to win the game, right?
Exactly, yeah, and with that mind games piece, I kind of feel like when you're applying this kind of process and reflection, these tools, to marketing, sometimes I think of the things like the canned emails and the automating the ask for the testimonial and things like that, like, can you put yourself out there once and then the automation kind of takes over and so then it just becomes like normal
Mhm.
and then you start getting the testimonials without even necessarily having to think about them and so it's kind of like the bonus but yeah, it's that piece of just thinking like how can I improve without necessarily having to like be really critical of my past self?
Mhm.
Um, and even in terms of like watching back the video, if you did just record yourself in your lounge, you would actually act differently than if you were in front of the people. So you're kind of like getting a slightly different set of feedback than you would otherwise.
Mhm.
But that if you didn't speak in front of like on a stage in front of people, you wouldn't ever have that tape to watch back.
That's it. That's it. And doing it. And I guess I always take whether this is very morbid, I suppose, but I always think, if I, for some reason, contracted a horrible disease and I wasn't able to do what I do, what would I say about myself then? And would I be proud of the choices that I'm about to make? And if the answer is no, I tell myself, don't wait till tomorrow for what you can do today. And that's really the genes that I got from my dad is really understanding. I guess I always want to be proud of what I'm doing and the person that I'm being. And it's interesting, my dad never told me, I'm proud of you. And this sounds like, oh my God, that's so horrible. But he always said, I'm not going to tell you I'm proud of you. I'm going to say that I'm happy for you because pride is something that you need to cultivate internally. And I would say, there's so many aspects to self respect, but pride is such an important aspect of can you say that you're proud of the effort that you're putting in, the proud of where you're at as a human being, as a businesswoman. And my hope is that women are saying yes. And that's something to build on. That is something
Yeah.
to build on.
Yeah, perfect. I often think of things like when I'm reflecting on a situation of like, would I want this for my future daughter? Um, because I find like some people maybe think about their inner child. I just found that when I was reflecting on that, for some reason, if I did it around my future daughter, then I was kinder somehow. It was like I was
Mm,
able to get out of my head and think of that like next generation piece or whatever. Um, so I was kind of thinking like what would I want? What would I want for her? Um, and in a way I've kind of like tricked myself into I guess being kinder to myself in a way. But it's kind of like, okay, well I wouldn't want her to be working extreme hours or um, putting herself second behind everyone. So then therefore why would I do it for myself? Um and then turning that into the action steps and then reflecting on those action steps, seeing how they make me feel and taking that pride piece, but then the action as well, because
yeah,
without action, unfortunately, the progress doesn't necessarily actually happen.
that's
Yeah.
it. The genius is in the doing, not the thinking or the planning, right? We wouldn't have people in space. We wouldn't have the light bulb if someone just said, oh, I have a really good idea. It's the action part that's the big kicker.
Yeah, totally. And then how about giving people time? Like When I think of some of the goals that I have, oftentimes I, like, think I can achieve so much more in a small amount of time. And so then sometimes I'm critical of myself for not being able to make those changes as quickly. But if you aren't feeling proud of your choices every day, that would be, I think, would start to become maybe like the self-esteem piece of over time, it's like grating on you.
Mm.
Is there I mean, everyone has their different timelines, but, like, is there a minimum like, how can people reflect on the amount of time they need, or should they have given themselves more time, um, especially if they do tend to be more impatient with their
Right.
own self-improvement, shall we say?
If you look at the definition of patience in the dictionary, my face would not be there. I'm the impatient. I'll be, the smiling assassin on that page. I think the difference between, I guess growth in your professional career versus your personal career is always going to be on different timelines because some people have had a really challenging upbringing and they might need more time. And I think they need to be respectful of that. Same goes with your professional. Like, I've been at this for, 12 years. And oftentimes I think I should be further ahead. Why am I not further ahead? And you can really get yourself into quicksand very, very quickly with that. So I think there's a balance between understanding why it's taking the time that it needs versus, and I would say even and or also understanding that sometimes you actually do need to be a little bit hard on yourself because I think there is, and this is perhaps maybe a bit controversial, but there is a sense of toxic positivity out there and being overly compassionate and overly, self love. Whereas I think I know this the difference between am I just lollygagging is a word that I use or dragging my feet? Can I say that for example, when it comes to my speech, can I say that I've given 100% effort to it? If the answer is yes, great. But if it's not going my way, and I said, well, actually, I've only given it an 80% effort, but I'm expecting a 100% result. That's when you can start saying, okay, that's why it's taking a bit more time. And I'm curious, what can I do to expedite that? So it's really looking at your situation objectively and understanding, okay, that is going to need a little bit more time because that's really deep. It's something that I need to dig and sort of discover. And likely I'm going to need someone on my journey with me to help me guide my way. Versus sometimes we have to be conscious of, that toxic positivity when we're actually just do need to be a little bit hard on ourselves because it's not like we're doing easy stuff here. Being in business, especially as a solopreneur, is hard. You are in your head all the time. It's very lonely. I mean, all the time. I'm very fortunate that I'm able to work with someone, every week and so forth. We have a call. But on the other times, it's very lonely. Making decisions. Should I put that word or that word? Oh, I have this idea for a new keynote. Is it good or is it stupid? Like it's so lonely. So I think being conscious of that as well, and sometimes it takes more time because you're so in your head and you need to sort of figure things out. It's a challenge.
Yeah, true. But then also thinking, where do you wanna be in a few years? You need to take some action, to get there, because unfortunately a magical pixie fairy isn't gonna come and just pass it to you on a platter. I
Yeah.
wish.
Yeah, and I think visualization, even though I'm so grounded in like data and research, like it needs to be proven, but I'll tell you this story and why I think visualization is actually powerful. And then this gets back to tall poppy syndrome and thinking you're arrogant. So when I did a visualization exercise, I pictured myself, sorry, didn't picture, I saw myself on stage with Oprah, promoting my book, right? And it was so clear. It was like I knew exactly the dress I was wearing, the shoes that I was wearing. I'm a bit of a shoe addict. And I saw what Oprah was wearing, which was a yellow monochrome suit. And the person I was doing this exercise with was like, oh, wow, that's really specific. Needless to say, 2 days later, I turned on the TV, Netflix. The first thing I saw was the interview between Oprah and Michelle Obama. And what was Oprah wearing? A yellow monochrome suit. If that is an indication that what you think you deserve is actually what you deserve, I don't know what is. So I think when it comes to, again, self respect as high achieving people pleasers, we need to force ourselves to say that actually, yes, we can do extraordinary things. We can be that person on stage. We can be that person that eventually sells our business for seven figures. If we don't believe in ourselves and are proud of what we're doing, we're never going to get there. So, what if I had one wish for your listeners when they finish listening to this episode is just understanding that if you respect yourself, you truly believe that you can do something extraordinary. Yes, the exception to the rule is you. You are the one to do what you have a special gift that only you can give the world. But you got to believe it and you got to see it. And I just hope that they really, truly from the bottom of their souls believe it. That's what I want for the world, for every woman on earth to know that they are doing something great when it comes to their business.
Totally. No, I love that. So tell everyone where they can find you and where they can take that quiz.
Oh, yes. Oh, I'm so proud of the quiz because it's just such a fun and easy way to learn more about yourself. So that's on my website. I'm sure you'll put it in the show links, but it's drkatherine.com. And the other place is Instagram. I love my Instagram. And there you'll find really fun, simple 60-second videos that perhaps might just give you the message that you need to have a bit more of a happy day. So I'm really proud of those videos. And I'm just about to record one now.
Amazing. Well, thanks so much for joining me.
Oh, it's been a pleasure. I'm sure we could chat forever.
Totally. Thank you for joining me for this episode of the Digital Hive podcast. I hope that you are able to take what Dr. Katherine has shared today and implement a few changes into your business and the marketing plan I spoke about on the previous episode. I know I'll be self-reflecting to figure out where I can find more alignment and pride in what I'm doing. If you're enjoying the podcast, I'd truly appreciate it if you could share it with a friend or on Instagram and tag me at Honeypot Digital. To find out more about Honeypot Digital and the marketing strategy and coaching work I do, or to find more marketing resources, head to honeypotdigital.com.